Hello everyone, so in this video I'll walk you through creating the sales performance dashboard in Power BI desktop, and then we'll publish this report to Power BI service. So let's get started. Let's take a look at the data source file that we'll be working with. It's a CSV file of soft drink purchases between 2020 and 2023. So we have product information, company information, product category. We've got units sold, revenue, cost of good and profit, the purchase date, and the customer demographics. Before we open up Power BI desktop and start creating our report, I'd like to take a step back and do a little revision on Power BI workflow. If you haven't watched that video yet, I highly recommend you do so. I'll put the link in the video description below. So basically the Power BI workflow, we have the planning phase, which is outside the scope of Power BI desktop. In Power BI desktop, we get the data, we transform, we model, then we create calculations, and finally we visualize the report by adding graphs and creating our reports. Once we are happy with the report, we publish and share to Power BI service, and then we can also manage the report on Power BI service. So in this video, I will take you through getting your data into Power BI desktop, all the way to visualizing your data, and finally we'll publish and share to Power BI service. So start a Power BI desktop on your computer. If you do not have desktop installed yet, I'll put a link in the video description below to a video I uploaded earlier on my channel on how to install Power BI desktop. So as soon as Power BI desktop starts up, you'll land on the home interface. So we'll get straight into creating a new report. So click on New Report. Starting at the ribbon at the top, we have the Home tab, which contains quick access to common tools like Get Data, Transform Data, Inserting Visuals, Creating New Measures, and Publish, which enables us to publish our report to Power BI service. Insert tab contains the necessary tools to insert visuals and other objects to your report. Next, we have the Modeling tab, which enables us to manage the relationships in the model or create new measures and tables. The View tab helps us to change the look of our report. Optimize helps us to optimize the report. Help contains recommended documentation and support. So moving on the left you have the Report view. So with the Report view selected, you'll have access to the report canvas, on which you can add your visuals and create your report. So next you have the Table view. So in the Table view, you can visualize your data. You can also add new columns, calculated columns to your tables. Next up, you have the Model view. So with the Model view, in the Model view is where you define and manage the relationships between the different tables in your semantic model. Okay, so clicking back on the Report view, you'll notice that on your right you have access to the Filter pane, the Visualizations pane, and the Data pane. So the Filter pane. So the Filter pane is where you add filters to your visuals, page, or all the pages in the report. Next up, the Visualizations pane. So this is where you'll spend most of your time adding visuals to create your report. So here you see you've got access to all the different visuals. And finally, the Data pane. This is where you can visualize the data columns that you have access to in your model. You can also add new measures here in the Data pane. Notice also that when you navigate between the different views by clicking on the view, the ribbon on the top and the pane and the panes on the right hand side will update accordingly to show the necessary features for each view. So for example, we're on the Report view. We see we've got access to the filters, the visualization, and the Data pane. Clicking on the Data view, we have access just to the Data pane. And the Model view, we have access to the Properties page, the Properties pane for the model, and the Data pane. Okay, so clicking back on the Report view, and just below the report canvas, you'll notice that you can add new pages to your report just by clicking on the New Page tab. Let's begin. So the first step in the Power BI workflow is to get the data. There are two options to get data. I'll show you both options, but I'll recommend one. Firstly, ensure that you have the report view selected. So next, on the top ribbon, select Home, and under the Data section you have Get Data. So let's select that. So under Get Data you have the common data sources listed, but if your data source is not listed, you can click on More. So now you have the Get Data window, which lists all the data sources that's available for you to connect to in Power BI Desktop. So on the left, you see that the data sources are organized according to categories. So you can browse through the categories to see the different sources that are available. Okay, if you don't know which category your data source might be in, you can also search the name in the search bar. So let's search for our data source, which is a CSV file. You also have a similar option directly on your report canvas. So you have Get Data from another source. So if you click on that, you're presented with the same Get Data window. So take note that you'll only have this option here if you don't have any data imported yet into your Power BI Desktop report. So let's do that. Click Get Data from another source, which basically presents us the same Get Data window. We're looking for our data source, which is a CSV file. Either you search, or since it's a common data source, it's listed as well directly on the list. So let's select that and click Connect. Let's navigate to where we saved our file and open. Okay, so now we have a preview of our data. So since this is a CSV file, we have a couple of properties, the properties of the file, which is the file origin, the delimiter. We also have a preview of the data here, where we can visualize the data to ensure that, yep, that's all the necessary columns that we want to have imported into our Power BI report. Now I'd like to bring your attention to these two buttons here, Load and Transform. So load basically means that you will load your data directly into your Power BI report. Okay, transform data means that you will be taken to what we call the Power Query editor to transform your data. If you remember, in our Power BI workflow, the first stage is to get the data, and the next stage is to transform the data. So that's what we want to do. We want to always, even if we don't need to transform the data, we'd like to still go through that step to ensure that our data is ready for analysis. So what if we click on Load? What's going to happen? So let's just test that. So if I click on Load, so you'll notice that Power BI will try to load this data. Okay, it loads it, it connects to your data source, and then it will load it directly, loading data to the model. So it loads it directly into your Power BI report. Okay, 100,000 rows loaded. Okay, so now you have the data loaded into Power BI, into your Power BI report or your Power BI model. So on the right, on your right, you see the data pane, which has the list of the table and all the fields. Okay, but we said that we want to transform the data first. We want to go through this step to transform the data. So let's just delete that from the model for now. So I'll delete the table from the model, and let's repeat this process again. So get data from another source. I'll select my text or CSV data source, select my file, open it up. I've got my preview mode here, and this time I will select transform data. Okay, so this time notice that we are no longer in the main Power BI report view or Power BI interface that we're used to with the report canvas. Now we are in another application here, if you like, which is called Power Query Editor. So it's in the Power Query editor that we will transform our data. Okay, we also have the possibility to connect to the different data sources in our Power BI query. Okay, so that was the first option on how you get your data. But I'd like to show you the second option, and the one which I recommend. So I will close out from there. Okay, let's cancel the changes that we just did. I'll just select discard changes. Discard meaning, okay, don't take into consideration the data that I just loaded. Okay, so the second option, and the one that I recommend, is to click on transform data. So once again, ensure that you have the report view selected. On the top ribbon, you select home, and under the queries section, you have transform data. So as you can see, when you put your mouse over the icon, or your cursor, sorry, over the icon, it has this tooltip to say that use the Power Query editor to connect, prepare, and transform your data. So this is the option that I highly recommend that you use to always go into Power Query to add your data and transform your data. So let's do that. Let's click on Power Transform Data. So that will take us directly into Power Query. Okay, remember we haven't added the data yet. We still have to go through that process to get the data. So in Power Query, we also have the possibility to get data. So let's click on New Sources. How do we do that? Under the Home tab, we've got New Sources. So let's click on that, New Source. So we also have a list of the common data sources available to us. Let's click on More. And once again, we've got the Get Data window, which is the window we're familiar with in our previous discussion. So we're looking for our text or CSV data source. Let's select that. And once again, let's connect to the data. Let's select the file where we saved it on our computer and open it up. We're presented with the same data preview. We're okay with all that and click OK. So now Power BI imports this data or loads this data into Power Query. So now we've done two steps at the same time. In regards to the Power BI workflow, we got our data, okay, we connected to our data source, and now we are going to go on to the next step in the Power BI process, Power BI workflow, and that is to transform our data. So firstly, the ribbon. So the top section of the Power Query contains the ribbon, which organizes many of its features into tabs such as the Home tab, Transform, Add Column, and View. So you'll see that each tab groups related functions together, making it easier for you to find the tools you need. Okay. Secondly, we've got the Queries pane. So on the left side, you'll see the Queries pane, which lists all the queries. So each query represents a set of data that has been imported and potentially transformed in Power Query Editor. So clicking on a query displays its data in the central grid and its applied steps in the Query Settings pane. So thirdly, we have the Data Preview. So the central part of the Power Query Editor is where you can preview your data. So this grid-like view lets you see the changes as you apply them, providing immediate feedback on the transformations that you're making. Fourthly, we have the query settings. So on the right, the query settings pane displays the properties of the selected query and the steps you've applied to transform the data. So you can modify, reorder, or delete these steps to adjust how your data is processed. And finally, the formula bar. So the formula bar, which can be shown or hidden via the View tab, displays Power Query formula language, which is the M code, for any transformation you select or apply. So for now, you don't need to understand how the M code functions, but just appreciate the fact that it's there. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the transformation steps that you'd want to apply to your data. So firstly, let's look at the data types. So if you click on a column, for example, the cost of goods sold, you'll see this icon here, 1, 2, 3. So basically, if you click on that, it will identify the different data types that's available for that column or in Power Query. So that column has been automatically identified as a number. So when you import your data into Power Query, Power Query is intelligent enough to automatically identify the data type, so you don't have to change that. Okay, so if, for example, I want to change that to text for some reason. So if I change that to text, it will just give me a warning to say, do you want to replace the current data type or add a new step? So let me just say add a new step. Okay, so now you see it has added a new step on the right on your query settings under applied step, and now the data type has changed to text. So if I put the cursor just above that, would it tell me that it's text? No. Okay, fine. So with ABC, if we click on ABC, we know that the data type is text. Okay, and then we've got other data types as well. Now is a good time to explain the query settings on the right. So as we explained earlier, so the query settings list all the applied steps, all the transformation steps that you've applied to your data. So for example, I am not happy with changing the data type from a number to a text. I can just undo this change by just deleting this step. So that's what I'll do, and then it brings me back to the original state of my column, which is a number. Okay, so that's how you identify the different data types or change the data types of each column. So for example, we want to split the customer name into first name and last name. So we select the column that we want to transform. On the home tab, there's a lot of tools that's available to us. We've already seen the new query tool, the data source settings, etc. You can update the column. Okay, so we'll come straight into transform section here, where we have the split column. Okay, so click on split column. So under split column, you've got the different parameters that you can apply to split the column. So let's select by delimiter, because we notice that there's a space in between the first and the last name. Okay, so automatically Power Query has identified that the delimiter for the customer name is a space. So that's fine. We leave it as it is for the delimiter. Okay, we want to split by the rightmost delimiter. So that means that we want to get the rightmost. If the name consists of a three-part name, we want to get the surname, because we believe, well, in most cases, the surname is usually at the end of the name, right? The last name in a person's name. So that's what we want to do. We want to get the rightmost delimiter. So let's select that and click apply. And automatically Power Query splits the column into two, and we have the first name, which is the first name and the last name. Okay, and we've also got a step being applied, a new step being applied in our applied steps section. Okay, so there are other transformations that you can apply as well. So for example, if we want to convert one of our columns from lowercase to uppercase. So in addition to accessing the functions on your main menu here, whether home or transform, you can also directly click on the column name, and you have also access to some more features or some more tools, transformation tools, by right-clicking on the column. So right-click on the column, you have access to all the different transformation tools. So you can remove the column, remove duplicates, change the data type, for example. But for our case, we want to change from lowercase to uppercase. So that's what we'll do. We'll change that to uppercase, or transform uppercase. Okay, so there we go. Data has been changed, and we also have an additional step. So you can go through basically the different transformation tools that you have available. So either under the Home tab, which you have a quick access to some of the tools here, or under the Transform tab, where you have access to more tools. Okay, you can also right click on the column itself, and you also have some more, the same options under transform or add a column. You have it under the transform column. You also have the same menu when you right click on the column. Okay, so after doing all the transformation that are necessary and you're happy with the data, let's now save this transformation and load this data into our Power BI report. So that's what we'll do now. So under close and apply, you see there's three options here. Whether you close and apply, which means that close out from Power Query and apply all the transformation, apply and save all the transformations that you've just done, or you apply the transformation and you remain in Power Query. And finally, either you close and not apply any transformations to the data. So what we want to do is to close and apply. So let's just do that, close, and it will save all the transformations that we just did to the query and load that into Power BI model, into your Power BI model or your main Power BI report. And that completes our get data and transform data stages of the workflow. So the next stage in our Power BI workflow is model data. So let's click on the model view. So the model view provides a graphical representation of the tables, columns, and relationships in your data model. For now, we just have one data table in our data model, but as you progress your learning journey, you'll add more tables and create relationships between these tables to build your data model. So the next stage in the Power BI workflow is calculate. So it's here that we'll be using DAX, or data analysis expression, to create our measures. So measures are dynamic calculation formulas whose results change depending on the context. So when we build our report, you'll see what I mean by that. So these are the measures that we'll be creating. So we'll be creating the total revenue, total cost of goods sold, total profit, the profit margin, and the average revenue per sale. Okay, so let's start creating our measures. So right click on the table, select new measure. Okay, so here this white bar here, or this bar here on the top, this white area space here, is called the DAX formula bar. Okay, as soon as we create a new measure, it gives us a measure name by default, measure, followed by an equal sign operator indicating the beginning of the DAX formula that we'll type in. So let's start by giving it a measure name. And then, since we're trying to calculate the total revenue, we'll be using the sum function. So let's type in sum. As soon as you start typing, you'll see there's IntelliSense as well in the DAX formula bar. So let's select sum, and immediately we have a tooltip as well giving us more description about the sum function. So from the description, we see that it's expecting a column name as an argument to the function. So the column name that will be passing into the function is revenue. Okay, so by typing the column name, IntelliSense has also helped us to quickly identify the column. So we select the column and we close off the parentheses. So now we have the first measure being created. Now let's go on and create the second measure, total cost of goods. So instead of retyping the whole thing, another method that you can do as well to speed things up is to copy and paste. So let's copy that measure, total revenue. Right click on your table, select new measure. Okay, and you paste the measure here. Let's just quickly change the measure name, total cost of goods, and we'll change it to the column cost of goods sold. Okay, there you go, the second measure has been created. Okay, next up we're going to calculate the total profit. So to calculate the total profit, we know that's the revenue minus the total cost of goods sold, right? So once again, let's right click on our table, create new measure. Total profit. And this time we'll be referencing the existing measures that we've already created. So that's total revenue minus total cost of goods sold. Okay, so let's create the next measure, profit margin. So we give our measure a name, profit margin. And to calculate the profit margin, we know that we need to divide the total profit divided by the total revenue, right? So this time we'll use the divide function. So type in divide function. We have our description showing in the tooltip. So our numerator will be the total profit that we've already calculated. Okay, and the denominator will be our total revenue. Okay, and the alternate result, give it 0 if there's a null value, or as an alternate result. Okay, close off the parentheses, and our profit margin has been created. So last but not the least, let's create the average revenue per sale. So let's go back again, new measure, average revenue per sale. So this time we'll use the average function. Okay, and then with the average function needs a column name, so we'll pass it the revenue column because we want to calculate the average revenue. So select the revenue column and close off your parentheses, and there you go, we've got all the necessary measures being created, and that's the end of the calculate stage of the Power BI workflow. So the final stage in our Power BI workflow when working in Power BI desktop is visualization. So let's begin. I'll start by adding a title to the report page. So click on report view, and under the insert tab select text box. Okay, let's just extend that so we have a big sort of a title at the top. Let's type sales performance dashboard. Okay, we have the properties dialog box as well for the text box. Let's increase the font size to say 32. Let's make that bold. Okay, so before continuing, let me just explain quickly the visualizations pane. So under the visualizations pane, you have two tabs. You have a tab to add data to your visual and the format tab. Okay, coming back to add data to your visual, you have a couple of visuals that's been proposed to you by default by Power BI desktop. To know the type of visual, you can just put your cursor over the icon and you'll have a tooltip of the visual name. Okay, so let's start. How do you add a column or a measure to your report page? So there are a couple of ways. You can just select the measure, like what I'm doing now. Just select the measure like that, or you drag and drop the measure onto the canvas. So you select the measure from your table on your right and just drag and drop it onto the report page. Okay, so for our report, I'll be using the card visual to add the key measures on the top. So let me just delete that for now. Delete the measures that I've added. Okay, so let's add in the key measures. That's the total revenue. Automatically Power BI proposes a visual by default. So let's change that to the card visual. Okay, so changing the visual from one type to the other is as simple as selecting the visual on the report canvas and then selecting the desired visual under your visualizations pane. Okay, so let me just change that back to a card visual. Okay, so next up I'd like to add the total cost of goods sold, the total profit, and the total profit margin. Okay, as it is, you see that there's only 3 measures showing up, but under the data column we have 4 measures. So sometimes some of the measures have a default setting, like for example this card measure has a default setting of 3. So to change that, you come under the Format Your Visual tab, and under Layout, you see the maximum card shown is 3. So we'll change that to 5 for now. Maximum of 5, for example. Okay, so once again, if you want to add data to your visual, make sure you're under the Add Data to Your Visual tab. But if there's some settings that you'd like to change on your visual, just select Format Your Visual. So let's go on and add some more visuals to our report. So firstly, I'd like to analyze the revenue by product. So let me just select Total Revenue, analyze that by product. Okay, so I've got all the products listed by revenue. Okay, so the aim is I'd like to show the top 5 products by revenue. So to filter and show only the top 5 products, under the filters pane, I'll select the product. Okay, you've got the basic filtering here, the advanced filtering. What I want to show is the top 5, so I'll select top N, select 5, and because I'll be ordering that by the total revenue, I'll select the revenue measure under the data pane, drag and drop that over to my by value column, my by value field, and apply the filter. Okay, so now we have the top 5 products by revenue. Let's just add that here. Next up, let's give it a appropriate title. So once again, coming under the Format Your Visual, under the General tab, title, let's change that by top 5 products by revenue. Okay, so that's okay for now. Okay, so the second visual I'd like to add is the profits by product. I'd like to analyze profits by product. So instead of repeating the process again to add the columns, one other sort of method that you can do to speed up the process as well is copy and paste. So let me just copy the visual here and paste that. Okay, so I'd like to analyze this time the profits by the product. So I'll just delete, I'll select the new visual, delete the column, delete the data field, and let me just add the profit field, profit measure. Okay, so now I'm selecting the top 5, the top 5 products, but then I'll just have to update the filter here. The top 5 is no longer by the revenue, but by the profit. So let me just delete that. Let me just filter by the profit column. Okay, so there you go. I've got the top 5 products by revenue, top 5 products by profit. I'd also need to change the title of the report. Let me just do that quickly. Profit. Okay. And the last visual I'd like to add is the customer, the total revenue by the customer. Okay, once again, I'll just select the existing visual here. Let me just paste it there. I'd like to analyze this time by the customer state. Let me just analyze that by the customer state. Okay, and not the profit. I'd like to analyze that by the total revenue. Okay, so this time I won't be showing the top 5. Let me just delete that. Okay, so I'm analyzing by the revenue. So let me just get rid of all the total profit. Let me just keep the customer state and the total revenue. But this time I'd like to change the visual. So let me see what visual can help me quickly better analyze this data. So let me use the tree map visual. The tree map visual. Okay, so that's too much information. Let me just select the top 5 customer state by revenue. Okay, so then again going to my top N, I'll select the top N 5, and I'm ordering that by the total revenue. So let me just drag and drop the total revenue here and apply the filter. Okay, and then let me just change the title of the visual. Under general, title is the top 5 customer state by revenue. Okay, so now our visual is starting to, our report is starting to come alive. Next up, I'd like to show the total revenue by month. Okay, so let me select the total revenue. And since I'm analyzing that by month, we have the purchase date. Okay, so under the purchase date, as soon as Power BI identifies a column as a date, it sort of splits that column up as well as a date hierarchy. Okay, so since I'm analyzing that by month, I'll just select month. Okay, so as usual, Power BI has proposed to me a clustered column chart, but that's not what I want. I want to change that to a line chart, or maybe I'll select the area chart. Okay, let me just change that to an area chart. Okay, let me just position that well. Okay, next up, I'd like to show the values of each month. So select the graph, select your visual. Under the Format tab, you should have data labels. Okay, so let me just activate that. So I've got the values for the total revenue per month. I'd also like to activate the markers for each data point. Okay, that looks good for now. Okay, so that's done. Let me just align it all well. Give me some more space. Okay, so the last visual we'd like to add to the report is a slicer visual. So basically that allows us to filter our report. So let me just select the slicer. Firstly, I'd like to filter the report by year. So coming back to my purchase date, I'll select year. Okay, so there are different options that we can have for the filter. Let me just select the format to format the slicer. Let me select the option, the style, the filter style. So I like the vertical list. So I'll just select vertical list. Okay, let me resize that. And once again, I can also use copy and paste. So I'll just copy and paste the slicer, because I'll be adding some more slices, at least 2 more slices. Okay, so you can also do that as well. Copy and paste the visuals that you already added. So next up, I'd like to filter by the company name. So I'll just remove the purchase date from the fields list, and I'll select company name. Where's my company name? Okay, sorry, it took a while to find that. Okay, the company name. Okay, and next, finally, we'll also filter by the category, the product category. So once again, copy and paste, and let me select the product category. Let me just delete the company from there. Okay. Okay, so as usual, we'd like to format our slicer visual. So I don't want to have the title there because it's already obvious that it's the year, it's the years that we're going to be filtering by. So select your visual under format. Let me get rid of the slicer header. Okay, so I'll just put that to off. I don't have the slicer header. Company, maybe I'll keep the company name so they know we're filtering by the company, and category, I'll keep that title as well. Okay, so we are done, and this is our report. So the next stage is the formatting, adding the theme, color, and all that. So let's just do that right now. So under the report view, go over to your views tab, and you have the different themes by default. Okay, so you can select the themes, that the color theme that you'd like. So let me just See if that looks nice. Yeah, that looks nice, the blue. Then you can sort of play around with the color themes until you have the color theme that suits you. Okay, let me select the color theme, green. So I like green, so let's keep green. Okay, so I can't show you guys all the options that's available, but basically if you want to change, for example, the title or the font color and all that, simply select your visual, and under the format your visual tab, you have all the options that are available here. Okay, just one option that I'd like to quickly show you guys is how to align your visuals. So you can select the visuals that you want to have aligned, like for example these 3 visuals up there, they are not well aligned, so we're going to select them. So select your first visual and then select, press the control key on your keyboard and select the other visuals. So once you got your visual selected, under format tab you have the align option. Okay, so you can align the visuals. Let's align them to the bottom. Okay, so the visuals are well aligned. Let's also align them, distribute horizontally. Okay, so they're evenly distributed. Okay, let me just quickly add the background color to the title. Okay, so I select my text box. Under effects, I can activate the background color. I'll also format the profit margin because I just noticed it's not in a percentage format. So I'll select the profit margin, and under the measure tools, I've got the different formatting options here. So I'll change it to percentage. Okay, and I'll put the decimal places to 0. So once you're happy with your report in Power BI Desktop, the next stage is to publish and share to Power BI Service. So we'll do that now. So under the Home tab, click on Publish. Power BI asks us to save the report. We'll do that, save the report, and then we'll publish to our workspace in Power BI Service. So I'll select my workspace and click Select. And now it's publishing to Power BI Service. And publishing has been successful. So over to Power BI Service, you can access Power BI Service by going to app.powerbi.com. You'll notice that once you publish your Power BI Desktop report to Power BI Service, 2 files are being created, your report file and your semantic model file. Okay, so let's go into the report. Okay, so this is your report published to Power BI Service. Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope you got some value in this video. If so, please consider supporting the channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.